the land where the dragon lived, the Yunju continent. The three countries separating the continent. At that time Emperor Wulguk ruled, who managed to unite all three empires. According to the prophecy, Emperor Wulguk was the strongest ruler. The current emperor of the country watched silently and dreaded the birth of his daughter. Full moon, the day of the birth at the palace. The emperor excitedly walked down the corridor, waiting for the child to be born. Suddenly, a maid came out of the room and called His Majesty inside. Blinded, the light came from the newborn child. The emperor praised his wife for giving birth to his child. He thought the heir was born, but it was a girl. After saying that, the empress started coughing up blood. She couldn't bear the labor and died. But before she died, she asked the emperor what name their daughter would have. With tears in his eyes, the emperor replied, "Our child's name will be Yu-Ji-in." 9 years later, the emperor had a new wife and a child, a little younger than the princess. After another fight with her brother, the girl was punished as usual, and the boy was pitied, saying what a bad sister he had. After this incident, the princess went to her room where the only maid who didn't hate her was cleaning. She was quite small and blind. "How was your day, princess?" asked the blind maid. But without answering her question, the princess sat her down on a chair and asked her what happened to her. She noticed an abrasion on her leg. "Well, I went to the palace as an empress and tripped. I'll put some ice on it and it'll be fine. Don't worry." The empress maids made her fall again. The princess thought. As was known to everyone in that country, the imperial family had a unique ability. They could heal wounds. And using her power, the princess healed the maid's wound. The maid thanked the princess, and even though she was blind, she noticed that the princess had wounds on her body. "Did the prince do this to you again?" "It's all right, it doesn't hurt at all. Look." The princess used her gift and healed herself. "See, the wound is gone," the princess said as she put the maid's hand on her face. The maid really wanted the girl to become empress, because she thought the emperor's son was too stupid and didn't deserve the throne. But the reality was that the throne belonged to him. Because he was the heir. Suddenly, a servant knocked on the door and said that His Majesty had ordered the princess to be brought to him. He asked her to get ready. When the girl came to the emperor's room, she asked, "Why did you summon me?" The emperor was puzzled by the question of ability manifestation. "Has your ability manifested?" asked the emperor. "Why are you so interested? Doesn't it manifest easily?" cheekily replied the girl. "When a princess ability manifests, the throne becomes hers. But that's not supposed to happen. And for some reason, she's lying that she doesn't have the ability." "Your Majesty, I do not covet the throne. The only person who can succeed you is a prince. If that's all you have to ask, I'll go." The emperor wanted to stop her, but she had already left. As she walked down the corridor, the girl thought, "If she doesn't have any problems, if she lives like this, it's as if she doesn't exist here. Therefore, she would live the way she lived." She certainly didn't want to stop being an empress. People were constantly suffering from monster attacks. They asked God for help. God sent a dragon to help the people, and then the dragon blessed 3 men, who became emperors of their countries. Blessed by the dragon, they ruled their countries peacefully. But after a while, humans forgot the dragon's gratitude, and human greed took over. The dragon's blessing became a curse. Power it was passed down from generation to generation. 9 more years later, the princess was sitting in the garden when her favorite maid came to her. "Look what I brought you," said the maid. It was some colored lollipops. The maid really wanted the princess to try them. She tried very hard to get them for her. At the same time, the prince's palace. He was doing nothing as usual and eating candy. When one of the courtiers told the prince that eating too many sweets was bad for his health, the prince almost killed him, only to be saved by the empress calling him at that moment. The empress wanted to ask him why he couldn't answer the teacher's question in class. A prince should know the answers to all questions, she told him. What's the problem? Why can't you learn all the answers? Did you call me to talk about this? Asked the prince. Mother was very worried about her son. She wanted her son to become emperor for sure. Sister said she did not covet the throne. If that's all you wanted to tell me, I'll go. As he left, he ordered one of the maids to bring him more sweets. The maid replied that all the sweets were gone, and the prince slapped her in the face in anger. Meanwhile, the maid and the princess came to the prince with the sweets. The prince mockingly thanked the princess, and warned her that in the future, not to take anything else that belongs to the prince. And about the throne, too. I don't believe you don't want it. It's your right to believe me or not. When the prince went to his room, he started beating the maid who gave candy to the princess's maid. He ordered her to be beaten and thrown out of the palace. One of the servants understood why the prince was so irritated and said, "You don't need to worry about that, prince. The worry needs to be removed by removing the cause." He came up to the prince and whispered something in his ear. The prince realized that there was a chance to get rid of his sister sooner than planned. She was a golden-eyed prophet. An ability that was a curse, not a blessing. The time would come and the world around her would crumble. It was foretold to the princess that the entire empire would disappear during the next eclipse. She warned the emperor not to make any mistakes. But the greedy emperor denied the prophecies. The emperor didn't want to lose his authority and accused the princess of treason. In the end, the princess left the empire. She was reported missing. At night, one of the prince's servants met with the princess maid and handed her poison to give to the princess. The maid went to the kitchen where they were preparing dessert for the princess and poured the poison into the princess' plate of food. At that time, the princess's favorite maid, Sewa, came to pick up the princess's food. The maid who put the poison in her food gave a basket of food to Sewa and she took the food to the princess. The princess unsuspectingly ate her dinner. After she ate her food, she fell down. It was the poison the maid had given her. The doctor who came to check on the princess said she had been poisoned by the most powerful poison in the land. He started to ask Sewa who gave her the dish, but Sewa was blind and couldn't answer. The doctor, under the pretext that he would ask the other maids, took the dish and left the room where the prince's servant was waiting. "The prince is calling you," the servant said to the doctor. No one but the doctor and the servant knew what had happened. But to the doctor's surprise, the prince asked what was wrong with his sister. The doctor immediately suspected something wrong. But he dared not disobey the prince's order not to say anything to anyone. The principal praised his servant who had proposed this insidious plan and said the following: "Now I want to destroy everything connected with my sister. It is unlikely that she will wake up anytime soon." In the meantime, the maid was sitting with the princess, and to help her princess she used her gift and cured the princess a little, but nobody knew about this secret except her, and she could not reveal her secret to anybody. Suddenly the prince entered the princess's room, went to her bed and said, "Do you remember the cat my sister and I loved when we were children? The kitten who was abandoned by his own mother. I gave him lots of food then. And he got so used to us that every day he came to us for food. One day he didn't show up. It turned out that the stone wall where he was coming from had collapsed right on top of him. He was in a lot of pain and died a few days later. The moral is, greed is a ruin. So just live without getting in over your head." At night, when the prince left, the princess was able to open her eyes. In the morning, the maids were already whispering that the princess had been poisoned. Soon the news reached the emperor. He ordered the detention of all those who prepared the food. Alarmed by the news, the prince's mother ran to his room and asked, "Prince, are you still asleep? Did you poison the princess? Why would you wake me up for such a trivial matter? What does it matter if that girl dies or not? Mother, how did you know? It's a little late for you to realize. His Majesty knows too." A voice came from outside the door. "Your Highness, the Emperor is waiting for you." The prince was forcibly brought into the imperial hall. The prince justified that it wasn't him and that he was wrongly accused of this terrible atrocity. But the emperor had witnesses and called them into the hall. It was the maid who sprinkled the poison who told His Majesty about it. But his mother stood up for the prince and said that the maid was lying and that she should be ordered to lie. This made it difficult for the emperor to decide who had poisoned the princess. But suddenly, the princess entered the hall. When the princess entered the hall, everyone realized that she had manifested the emperor's self-healing abilities. The princess confirmed that she could use her powers. And the prince will train to awaken his abilities. Self-healing is one of the easiest abilities. Once the principal couples his abilities, he will grow times faster than the princess. But for now, only the princess can use the power, so the successor will be the prince," shouted the emperor. "How can a princess rule a country? This has never happened in history." After the incident, the empress conferred with one of her advisors. He said that the prince's abilities would manifest before he turned 19, and the princess would not get the throne. Meanwhile, in the princess's room, her maid was praising the princess for her abilities. She said, "The princess didn't show her abilities, so everyone was on the prince's side. But the princess almost died yesterday. If they find out about your ability, they'll kill you." But I calmed down my maid and told her that she showed the simplest ability. It can't be a threat to the prince. Rather, they have accepted my challenge, and the principal will try to awaken their abilities faster. During the night, the maid Sewa met with some person on the street who handed her some scroll. When she got to her room, she read the prophecy that was written on it. She put the scroll by her bed and went to sleep. The dragon's blessing became a curse. He spread it throughout the continent. Every ability had a fatal end. An imperial family with immense power was not comparable to the power of a dragon. The prophecy said that many people would die in this battle. The imperial family with the ability to heal went to war and killed hundreds of innocent people. Because of the curse, the ability was important in the fight against the three countries. The Doke state destroyed the Bam state. In the end, there was only one ruling country on the continent. The imperial family had red hair, and there is a theory that the power comes from it. Red hair. The prince had it. Puzzled by this question, the prince came to his mother to ask why he had red hair. "Prince, listen to me carefully." The empress whispered something to the prince, after which he left the room with an angry face. His mother remembered how she and her sister were beautiful together, and her sister had to marry the emperor. But after her death, the emperor was desperate to marry her, and so she became empress and vowed that her sister's child would not spoil her son's life. The next day, Sewa walked with the princess in the park. No one knew about her gift, but it turns out she had the gift of foresight. She foresaw something terrible and frightening. Something that could kill her or the princess. At the same time, the emperor and his wife were eating in the same room. "Your Majesty, would you like the princess to sing and dance at His Majesty's birthday banquet?" When the princess celebrates His Highness's birthday and performs a dance, everyone will admire His Majesty and the princess's reverence. The emperor said that if she wanted to do it, let her do it. The empress only wanted her to do it. A while later, a servant came to the princess's room and announced that the princess was to sing and dance at His Highness's birthday banquet. The prince would perform a sword dance and the princess would sing and dance. For generations, the imperial family has performed a sword dance in honor of the emperor's birthday. But to me, it's just a celebration where everyone gets drunk. The princess thought to herself. The maid really didn't want the princess to do that, but she replied. It's the empress's order, can't I obey? Everything will be fine, Sewa. Since they have decided to use me as a puppet, I will turn a blind eye to it which can be conquered. And there's no position to give up. It was the emperor's birthday. It was the princess and the prince's turn to dance. The princess danced and twirled and everyone admired her smooth movements. Her future husband will be lucky, thought all the courtiers. But still, all of you were unhappy that the princess was dancing for the servants of the imperial palace. It's horrible. To expose the princess' beauty to others. Do those who look at the princess think she is a descendant of noble blood? They look at her as a caged animal. After the princess performed her dance, it was the prince's turn to perform his sword dance. Prince Charming mastered the balls and skillfully repelled the attacks of his opponents. A guest from the west was invited to this feast. It was a young, fair-haired man, of athletic build and handsome face. After the performance of the prince and princess, the emperor asked him if he liked the performance of his children. He replied that the prince's dance was perfect for such events. Moreover, the princess's dance was equally impressive. The strong flexible movements were beautiful. I heard that the imperial family has a rare ability. I wish I could see it with my own eyes. Prince, don't you have this mysterious ability? The guest asked the prince. The ability manifests until the age of 19. The prince is 18 this year. So the power will appear soon, replied the emperor. The guest was very sorry that he would not see this ability. After the feast, the prince was very angry with his sister because she had the ability of the imperial family manifested. So he wanted to get rid of her again, but now he didn't want to kill her, he wanted to kill the princess maid. He called his maid and ordered her to kill Sewa. Meanwhile, the guest who came from the west was resting in his room. Kashika, the dragon is hiding his power point, will have to stay here. I'm sure it will be fun soon. The oracle has foretold that a great event will take place in the east, I'm afraid. It will be dangerous. That same night, Sewa met with her mysterious servant again. The prediction is coming soon, you must help me. Wall will arrive breakfast 12 noon, so we will talk about it later, it is the fulfillment of the prophecy. There can't be any mistakes. We need to get everything done in time. The servant replied that everything would be done without mistakes, and they parted. The next morning, the prince came to the princess to ask her to go hunting with him. To her surprise, her maid wanted the princess to go with him, and she agreed to go hunting with the prince. And she promised her maid to bring something from the hunt. After packing her things, she and her maid set out on a hunting trip. As they approached the forest, the prince wanted to bet with the princess who could catch the prey faster. The princess agreed and they both rode into the forest. When they saw the first animal, they were eager to catch it. But suddenly the princess heard the cries of her maid and rushed to her. When she came running to the scene, she found only a bandage that was covered in blood. She started questioning the maids who were with her, and they said that arrows flew at them and they started hiding from them. The princess immediately realized that it was a setup. She realized that they wanted to kill Sewa. One of the maids said she saw people dressed in black, they took Sewa away. It began to rain, though the sky was clear. The princess turned to the prince. Quickly. Go back home and tell His Majesty that an assassination attempt has been made. I was told that a group of people dressed in black clothes released poisoned arrows. During the commotion, my maid disappeared and I was told that she was wounded by an arrow. But only one maid died because of the assassination attempt. Besides, was she not pleased? Asked the prince. You are right. Usually a blind maid who needs her. But I'm the same way. Who would go to kill the princess and risk her life? The only person who inherits the throne is the principal, so it could have been attempted murder of a prince, will be severely punished. So report this to His Majesty, I will definitely find them and tear them to pieces right in front of my eyes. The princess got on her horse and rode into the forest to look for her maid. She remembered her maid, and the most pleasant moments she had with her. She wanted nothing more than a quiet life with her. Upon arriving at the emperor's palace, the princess immediately ran to him and told him that an assassination attempt had been made on the imperial family. She told the story of how she had been hunting with the prince and how a group of people dressed in black had shot the maids. Now, search the hunting grounds and interrogate everyone who was there. Immediately, the emperor gave the order. The prince's guards were too weak to allow such a thing to happen. The princess said that no one was hurt except the maid. The emperor was angry that she had disturbed him because only one maid had died. And how am I supposed to trust you when you can't distinguish between personal feelings and love? You came here like this just because a maid died? We must increase the prince's guard. Because if there is even the slightest scratch on his body, there will be a big scandal. What is the price of a common maid's life? You've made a fuss out of nothing. Better go back to your moon palace. The emperor said angrily. All this time, I've been trying to live my life to please you. Since I was born into the Amuga family, I was given this gift. She pulled out the dagger her mother wielded, letting me know to live my life without anyone knowing me. This is the price of life that fate was preparing for me. Saying this, she walked up the steps to the emperor, pulling the dagger out of its sheath. She raised the dagger above her head and,